she experienced resilience and she faced the power of standing back again after experiencing what she did in her past. We have Sayyida Zaidi today with us, who is not only a business coach, but she has also specialized in positive psychology and is the author of Amazon's best-selling book, Results. Sayyida Zaidi, welcome to the show.
So much. It's lovely to be here with you.
Absolute honor to have you. So I'm sure you're as excited as I am to talk about your new book. And what I find really fascinating is the fact that most of us during lockdown, we were dwelling over what to do, how to cope. Um, it's a unique experience that we all face this year. But then we have people like you who made the most of this lockdown, of this pandemic, and they turned their free time, spare time into something positive by writing a book that's going to help thousands and thousands of people out there who are facing all the challenges in daily life and they're struggling to cope and they want to achieve their goals, but they're really struggling to get that done. So, Saida, please introduce yourself and tell us about your fantastic book. What prompted you to write this?
Thank you so much. I suppose I experienced the pandemic very much like everyone else did. At first, I had no idea of how it was going to unfold. And the biggest challenge that I had personally is that I've had 3 periods in my life where
Mhm.
I describe it as if I've lost 6 months. And so the
Yeah,
first was after a car accident where my car was written off and I was almost written off as well. And then next was after I left my corporate role, and I
mhm.
kind of made a very deliberate decision to do that. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I started to then to listen to everybody else's noises and things and wasn't sure. And then
Yeah.
the last one was after, or when we were traveling. And as we were traveling, there was just something about that time where I didn't feel it. All of a sudden, I was uh, doing the dream life that everyone aspires to, but there was just
Yeah.
something missing. And because I'd had those experiences, the minute I started to think this could be similar to that, I don't want to waste my time. What can I do? So I sat at my desk for several days just trying to find the answer. And really, the book Results, the Art and Science of Getting It Done is a
Yeah.
response to me trying to find the answer for how do I make sure that I can make progress in life, but also take care of myself. And it's kind of like a summary of a lot of the work that I've been doing with clients and with businesses over the last 10 years.
So I can say that you've been there, done that, and now you've got results in front of you. So you've used your own experiences, your expertise, your knowledge, and you've combined them all together and you've presented results. So how is this going to help people who have goals in life, but they're struggling to achieve them?
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons why people struggle to make the progress that they seek or to achieve the results that they're seeking. And part of that is because there is no intrinsic alignment between their goals and aspirations and hopes and dreams and who they are as a person. And so when you look at the results method, there are a number of kind of elements that are strategically placed within it to help people to make progress. And the first is what I call the results GPS, and that's the goal positioning system. And there's 4 elements to it. There's intention, identity, integrity, and implementation. And what we do is we begin essentially by making sure that the intention is clear and sincere. And once you know that piece and you know who you are, then you pick the projects that you're going to work on. You will make progress. Inevitably, you will, because you're
Yeah.
working on something that's important to you rather than working on projects or aspirations that really are not yours, but they're somebody else's. And I think that's the key distinction.
Mhm. So basically, you need to understand yourself first. That's the first step. Understand what you want in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't understand who you are and what's important to you, then how do you know what to say yes to and what to say no to? I mean, so many of us have got kind of aspirations to do things. For example, when you're growing up, certainly for me, my experience is that society wanted me to become an architect, not an architect, an engineer, a accountant, a lawyer, or something like that. And I decided to follow in the architecture profession, which is kind of
Yeah.
fitting in with that, but not necessarily the typical kind of result that one would expect from somebody grown up in an Indian subcontinent background like me. And so the
Yes.
thing is, it's really about making sure that you have that alignment to what you want. And I've seen so many people kind of progress in their careers and then realize that that's something that they actually don't want. Now, I chose architecture and I really enjoyed the work that I did. I loved my studies, but there was something missing. And I think that, when you look at how the rest of my career has unpacked, you then start to see that had I been a bit more deliberate about understanding who I was, how I wanted to show up, and the choices that I wanted to make in terms of going to university, I might have picked something different. That said,
Mhm.
that doesn't, I don't regret anything that has kind of led me to where I am, because that skill
Yeah.
set that I have picked up along the way actually, I think,
Yeah.
has enabled me to be in a very unique position where I can combine positive psychology with personal growth and project management and produce a book like this that actually provides you with a step by step guide for how you can get
Mhm.
things done.
I think that's a fantastic thing to offer to the community because this whole year has been quite difficult for most of us, and I think this is how I feel that Allah has given us a chance to rediscover ourselves. Lots of people are going through a career change. Lots of people have changed their field of study as well as their field of work because they felt that their temperament is not made for this but for that, and those people who are maybe indecisive or they can't decide where to go, but they do want to achieve something in life, I think they'll find this book pretty valuable.
Yeah, inshallah. I mean, I've written it so that it's strategically placed for you. You go at the speed that you want to. And if making progress right now is just pausing and looking at the landscape and taking stock and saying, I need to work out what I do next, that actually is also progress. And I describe this, the kind of results of this in terms of the projects that you work on, very much like this. If someone has £1 to donate in charity, if that's the only pound that they have, that's a huge
Yeah.
amount for them. But for other
Hmm.
people, donating thousands to charity doesn't even, affect them. It's like pocket change. And so
Yeah.
the progress that you make has to be seen in the context of your circumstances and your situation. And it's really
Of
about
course.
making sure that you do what is right for you rather than kind of comparing yourself to other people. Because when we do that, then of course we're bound to feel as if we are not making the progress that we want to. And I think the pandemic has given us that opportunity to pause and stop and say,
Hmm.
well, what is it that we really want? And of
Yes.
course, human nature, you are going to compare yourself to other people. But I would
Yeah.
just encourage you to just stop and think, what is it that you actually really want? And focus in on
Hmm.
that piece. That's how you'll make the progress.
So you need to ask these key questions to yourself, right?
Yeah,
So say
absolutely. I
the
mean,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
please go on. No, 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 go on.
Yeah, there's so much power in asking the right questions. Even I if I look at the Quran, there's just some really, really incredible questions in there, and one of them is kind of like, where are you going? And I remember, we can read the Quran in so many different ways, but I remember 10 years ago I read that, and those few words, they just stuck out to me so much, and it made me think, gosh, where am I really going? What is the purpose? What is the journey that I want to be on? And so whilst the book Results There and the Art and Science of Getting It Done isn't a book for Muslims, it's a book for everybody, it's the book for the whole of humanity. Actually, that
Yeah.
piece about where are you going is very, very fundamental. And I think that as a question, again, is available to the whole of humanity because we are all on a journey together. And so
Yes.
ensuring that you ask yourself these right questions are absolutely critical.
Because that's when you do reflect on things, on yourself. And in order to bring a positive change, you need to bring that change within yourself first before you can create that change around you. Say that you have experienced trauma, first-time trauma. You've had an accident. You've been there. You know what it feels like to experience something like that. And we know that resilience is the ability to cope with crisis, to get back on your feet, to bounce back. Why do you think resilience is important in life?
So I mean, I think that resilience is twofold. I think one, it is about the ability to what I actually call bounce forward. And it's,
Yeah,
you take stock. There's a lot of research that's been done on post-traumatic growth, and so people who've been through a challenging experience are able to take that and really kind of grow at exponential levels. But there is also a really significant piece about self-compassion and self-care being part of resilience. And when we look
mhm,
at what is happening with the NHS and other frontline services at the moment, and of course, all the people who are staying at home, kind of confined in small spaces, everyone's having to lean into resilience, whatever it means for them. And I
yeah,
would kind of offer that the starting point for that is understanding what your specific needs are and then seeking help. Because for me,
yeah,
in my own journey, that was the thing that kind of enabled me to make progress. Otherwise, I could still be sitting on that sofa, pretty much immobile, unable to peel a potato, because I hadn't
yeah,
said to my healthcare team and to others that were around me, what do I need to do to get myself out of this situation? And it was really
yeah,
as a result of that I am where I am today.
yeah. Say that people face all kinds of adversity in life. I mean, there are personal crises such as illnesses, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, bullying. I mean, the list is endless. But there is a shared reality of tragic events, in the news, such as terrorist attacks, mass shootings, natural disasters, what have you. I would like to ask you, during this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, how can people cope and work through their challenging life experiences?
I mean, I think the first thing really is about creating a psychologically safe space for you to have that reflection and to think, well, how am I responding to this? That's the first thing. And then I would say, if you need help, right,
Yeah,
please do not be shy of seeking help.
yeah,
I know that therapy and counselling is really kind of bursting at the seams at the moment in terms of referrals. But that does not mean that if you need the required help, that you go forward and you seek it, because it's absolutely essential for you to do that. And the stigma that existed, 20 or 30 years ago in terms of getting that psychological support has gone. If you
yeah,
still feel it, it's probably more about you than it is about others. Yet, what happens, when we have challenges that we face in terms of mental health, we just dismiss it and say, oh, it'll be okay. But I guarantee if you cut yourself or if there was a burn that was kind of verging on it being second or third degree, you would be calling for an ambulance. And I think that
yeah,
we need to make a shift where we take our mental health as seriously as that. And so, I mean, and I am talking about situations which may not be applicable to everybody, but what I would say is
yes,
find that person that you can speak to, and also be that person for somebody else.
definitely,
Everyone
yeah,
will know a young person in their network that could just do with a conversation. If you're thinking about somebody, pick up the phone to them and just ask them how they are. You don't need to kind of say, oh, I was worried about you. Just ask, hi, how are you? It's that simple. And the impact of that is so profound in how that
Yeah.
other person feels, but also how you feel. And I think that this is something that we forget because we feel as if we're doing these things for other people, but just as much we're doing it for ourselves.
Say that some people believe that being resilient means you have to be mentally tough. Although it's a process, it's about demonstrating resilience. And it includes work through emotional pain and suffering. How can people build resilience? Because every individual is different.
I mean, I think it's such a difficult question to unpack. How do you build resilience? But at the same time, everyone experiences adversity and challenge and suffering in their own special way. And I think that when
Yeah.
you lean into that, then you are building resilience. But I will kind of emphasize this point again. Resilience isn't just about kind of powering through and struggling and dealing with complex situations. Resilience is also about being compassionate to yourself. And there's some wonderful
Mm,
research that's coming out of the New Zealand Institute for Wellbeing and Resilience on self compassion and making sure that you
mm,
do take care of yourself. So please, don't think that one just leans into a tough situation, you put on your armor and you go. That's not what it's all about.
yeah.
Self-care, kind of making sure you sleep enough, that you're eating the right things, that you exercise, all of those other things, creating psychologically safe spaces for you just to reflect and pause. That is all part of building resilience as well.
You mentioned compassion towards your own self and being compassionate towards other, and that helps in resilience. What about showing gratitude or acceptance, accepting what's happened? Does that play a role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is a really interesting piece, particularly for me, reflecting on my own journey. Because at the time, 20 years ago, when I was going through the car accident and everything that was unpacking, it felt
Hmm.
horrendous. I mean, I can't describe it in any other way. But now, when I
Yeah.
look back on it, I am actually very grateful for what happened. And
Yeah.
had it not, I probably wouldn't have gone on this other journey. Now, in terms of acceptance, that's also something that I think is very significant in terms of making sure that you are able to kind of look at the situation in the round and say, well, this did happen to me. But what I will say about these two pieces in terms of kind of acceptance and gratitude is that it doesn't come overnight. And so when we look at the pandemic and some of the challenges that are still yet to come for us, then allow yourself the time that it takes. Don't just think that one day you can make a decision to say, oh, it's okay, I'm just going to accept it. Because unless you've done the
Yeah.
work and you've kind of allowed yourself to get to that place, then there is a sense of that kind of shift being false sense of gratitude or false
Yeah.
acceptance. And then you're kind of burying things. And I would encourage everybody just to be really open and honest with themselves and not to pretend. And so if you are angry or you're upset or you're just not able to be in a place where you can accept the ramifications of a situation or you're not in a position to forgive, then
Yeah.
it's okay. But do the work. Don't just stay in that
Hmm.
place because you can move from that to one where
Yeah.
you are grateful and you have got acceptance. Because once you do that, then you remove the power from that incident. So for me, if I was still affected by my car accident, I wouldn't be driving. I wouldn't have done so many things in my life. And so that,
Hmm.
that thing that happened within literally a minute, 20 years later could still have control over my life. And that's not useful to anybody. And so if you're watching this or you're listening and you're kind of thinking these are really big words, then have space, be compassionate to yourself, allow that kindness. Eventually it will happen, but it is a journey.
Say that developing resilience is both complex and personal, and some people clearly struggle to show resilience. Why is that?
That's a really interesting question, and I think that it's partly because maybe they're looking at the situation a different way. Maybe they don't have the opportunity to unpack it. And maybe they're not even
Mm.
thinking about resilience because, you know, I really see resilience as being something on a spectrum. It
Yeah.
being resilient doesn't just mean that you kind of like, put yourself into tough situations and you can get through them, because some of the
Yeah.
strongest, most courageous people are unable to do that. I think
Mm.
resilience is very much about the day-to-day experience of life and being able to get through those small challenges and those small struggles. And if you find that difficult, which a lot of people do, and I do sometimes as well. So don't think that life is perfect for somebody like
Yeah.
me or for somebody that does research or even teaches resilience, because we all have
Hmm.
those moments where we just think, gosh, I wish this didn't happen, or why is this happening to me, or it's so difficult. And it's about allowing that space. I mean, I know I keep going on about that, but it's
Yeah.
really, really important to just pause and say, this is tough, this is hard,
Yeah.
and then to either have a conversation with a friend or a coach or a counselor or a therapist or God. Do whatever you need to do, but don't allow yourself to stay in that situation. And remember that it is very much on a spectrum. But of course, you can build that muscle of resilience by looking at your life and thinking, what is it that I'm finding tough and hard, and why? And then starting to unpack that piece.
Saida, what about those people who are making plans in regards to their future, but because of the traumatic experience they had in their past, now they have developed fears, and these fears are kind of holding them back. They want to proceed further, they do want to move further, but they're struggling, they're scared.
Yeah, and I think the fear is it's it's allowed. There is no emotion actually that I would say is not allowed. Perhaps
Hmm.
what is challenging is when you stay in a place for too much. But if you feel, or if you have something from the past that is holding you back from the future, then
Yeah.
all I can say is, see a coach or a therapist or get counseling. That is the way that you are going to unlock this. And
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of really important work that's been done on neuroscience, on neurobiology, on physiology, that says that when we experience a trauma, if we don't do the work that is necessary in order to unlock the impact of that trauma, you pass it
Hmm.
down generationally. And I think
Wow.
that if someone is watching this and is kind of scared of even starting the process to do the work, just remember that in some ways that impact is going to last a lot longer than you. And I think it's very important for all of us, particularly the children of immigrants, to do this work,
Yes.
because there could be trauma in generations before us that is somehow affecting us and we're not even aware of it.
Talking about immigrants, I was thinking about refugees living in the camps. Um, they have seen like the worst in their life, war, conflict, and then living in the refugee camp, that doesn't help either. That kind of adds to their negative experiences. And they're constantly living in that kind of environment. They can't get out of it when they want to. So, for people who are living in stressful environments, who are constantly exposed to trauma, how hard it is to cope for these people and what kind of strategies can they apply?
I mean, you're asking a question that is way above my pay grade. But what I would say is that if you are in that situation, then the best thing that you can do is seek the help to get out of that situation. I mean, I can kind of speak perhaps about people who are in situations where there is kind of an abuse of some form, right? I would
Yes.
say if you are in that situation, then again, seek the help that you need to remove that stress. Because I believe that it's almost impossible to be in these situations and for you to be able to flourish and thrive. It's an artificial environment that has been created. And so the best thing that you can do is to really work on trying to remove yourself from that situation. I know it's not an ideal answer, but
Yeah.
there are people who are far more qualified and far more capable, I think, than me to really be able to provide a more useful response, particularly in terms of the camps that you're mentioning.
All the viewers who are watching Sayyida right now, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, if you want to give your feedback, share comments, please feel free to do so on our Hidayat TV's Facebook page, YouTube, or you can call in our studio and directly speak to our guest today. Sayyida, you also studied positive psychology, and that plays an important role in changing people's perceptions and attitudes towards themselves and life in general. And this whole year, lots of people have experienced loss of a loved one or loss of a job, and it's kind of hard to see positivity in the future because there's uncertainty everywhere. What is the best way to deal with uncertainty in these times?
I think, the only way that I can answer that is by saying that the only certainty in life is uncertainty, right? We have no real idea of what is going to happen tomorrow, and we can make plans, we can have aspirations and hopes and all of that things, but our creator is making bigger plans for us. And I think
Definitely.
that what we need to do is be in a position where we understand that the landscape is complicated. No one anticipated what was going to be coming this year. In fact, we have no idea how the next few weeks and even next year is going to unpack itself. But what we do know is we have some level of certainty of this moment that we're in. And so I would encourage people to focus on what is happening right now in front of them rather than worry about the future, in terms of, am I going to be able to do, what happens if I get COVID? What happens if the
Yeah.
schools are shut? All of, because nobody knows the answer, and you could be artificially preparing for situations that may not even happen. Yet when you focus in on this moment that is in front of you, it's easier for me to then say to you, well, what joy are you experiencing right now? What do you have to be grateful for? Because if I ask you, what are you going to be grateful for in 2 weeks' time? You have no idea. Like, I have no idea. And the
Yeah.
other side of that is that if we spend too much time in the past and we're thinking about, oh gosh, why did this happen? Why did that happen?
Yeah.
We don't know the answers. But there is something really, really powerful about just saying, well, there was a lesson that I had to learn, or there was an
Mm.
experience that I had to go through. There is benefit in everything that is happening. And so the uncertainty will always be there. And
Yeah.
lean into what is in front of you right now.
Saida, we know there are different types of resilience. There's physical, psychological, emotional. If you could please briefly touch on that for our viewers.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose physical resilience really is about making sure that your body is at its optimum, in terms of
Mm.
making sure that, you get enough sleep, you drink enough water, you're eating the right things. And I suspect that your viewers are listening in thinking, yeah, yeah, we've heard it all before. But what's fascinating is that the World Health Organization has spoken about sleep deprivation being a global pandemic. Now, in
Wow.
2020, we know what a pandemic means, yet
Yeah.
people are increasing their propensity to heart disease and diabetes and so many other
Mm.
disease because they are not sleeping enough, right? And so I would say that in terms of physical resilience, please, take that extra few minutes to sleep. Remove your phone and your gadgets from the bedroom so that you're improving the quality of your sleep. These
Mhm.
things may seem fairly obvious, but I know so many people aren't doing them, and it would be wrong of me to say that I'm on it all the time. I'm not. We're all
Yeah.
on a journey, but we've got to make
Yeah.
sure that we see that as building physical resilience. Um, I mean, what you asked about emotional resilience as well. I mean, I think that's
Yes.
another one
Yeah.
that's really, really important. And I would say, be kind to yourself, create that space where you can journal and you can have your hopes and your dreams and your aspirations, and think positively about yourself. you know don't focus too much on the things that you want to be critical of about yourself and about others. Human beings are wired for negativity. That is just the way
Mm,
that our creator has made us. But that doesn't
yeah.
mean that you are negative about yourself all the time, because there
Mm,
are a lot of really, really good things about every single individual. And I would encourage you to celebrate those things just as a 4 year old would. Because a 4 year old is not going to focus in on their negative stuff. They're going to come bouncing in the room and saying, "Look how pretty I am." And that's what I would
yeah.
encourage people to do in terms of building their emotional resilience.
We've talked about resilience on an individual level, but what about resilience as communities?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, and then so much to unpack there, particularly given
Yeah,
the everything that has happened this year with COVID,
yeah.
the pandemic, and Black Lives Matter. And I just think
Mm,
that resilience is a within communities is much needed. But one could also argue that by being too resilient, you then end up
yeah.
in a situation where you're just dealing with so much trauma and struggle, and it's at a level that is unacceptable. And so
Mm,
I think that globally, what we need to do is to be in a place where we are working on increasing our well being. And within communities, it's about identifying what is necessary in order for that local grouping or that group to be able to raise its level of joy and lived experience in life. And that is a conversation for people to look at within their local communities. And I would say start with your family, because most
yeah.
families could do with improving their level of resilience and self-compassion and gratitude and kindness and care. And that, I
Mm.
think, is applicable to everyone around the world. So let's start with that, because when you do that, then it has ramifications more globally as well.
Saida, when we talk about daily life problems or daily life stresses, whether it's at work or in our personal life, there are certain things that are always going to be there. It's not going to completely eradicate itself from the world. So when you're dealing with something like that on a daily basis, I think it's the power is yours, as in how you react or how you respond to these daily stresses. Some people build healthy coping strategies, whereas some people they resort to unhealthy coping strategies, and then one problem leads to another. Um, can you give us some examples so we can get a better understanding of this?
I think, everyone is experiencing challenges at the moment. For example, London recently changed from tier two to tier three lockdown. And one of the things that I really enjoy and get a lot of benefit from in terms of my mental health is being able to go out and get a coffee and sit in a coffee shop for 20 or 30 minutes. And I can't do that
Yeah,
anymore. And so that I could, it's possible for one to get irritated and to get annoyed. And I would say that that's not useful or helpful. So the question to always ask yourself in whatever situation you're in is my response right now serving me, or is it preventing me from doing something? Like, is it holding you back? And when you think about it like that, then actually you're able to kind of change your response, because at the end of the day, in those tiny kind of micro situations that are occurring every single day, by
yeah,
responding in a way that is not serving you, it's you you're not helping, right? So if someone phones you up and they're irritated with you, or if your kid is not doing something that you want them to do, or whatever the scenario is, you can choose to respond in a way where you just kind of
mm,
release that emotion, or you can think, well,
yeah,
how does the best version of who I am show up in this moment and be of service to myself and also, I suppose, then be a leader to that other person. And I'm saying this, but I'm also just kind of pausing and taking a very quick time out, saying, if the best thing for you in that moment or at some point in the day is for you to kind of go for a walk or take 5 minutes and just kind of release the tension and the stresses that are in your body, then go and do
Yeah.
that, because holding that negativity in is not useful, right? One of the things that I would encourage everyone to do is to have a pen and to journal, and to do it with a pen, because you're able to kind of get those thoughts out, and you can do it on a daily basis, or you could choose to do it on a weekly. But whatever you do, just allow that stuff to be released from you, because you're then kind of, it's quite a cathartic process in terms of it being
Hmm.
released, but it also then enables you to kind of like take that and say, well, if you want to shred it, you can. If you want to just tear it up into lots of different, and that in itself is quite a useful process as well. And find those little strategies that you can use that help you. And I also find actually prayer is very, very useful. So when I'm making dua or I'm asking
Yeah.
Allah for things, then I don't approach that as a conversation of kind of just asking and of complaints. I also
Hmm.
say, kind of like, how do you help me to resolve these situations? How can you help me to be my best self so that I can kind of really help others and help myself? And I think that is absolutely critical, because it will improve your experience of life, but it also has a very positive impact on others that are around you.
I was thinking, you mentioned about your own experiences, and I'm sure there was a time when you asked a lot of questions to yourself, and you were struggling to find the right answers. And like you mentioned that you don't have any regrets that it happened. You're in fact grateful that it did, because you still managed to get something positive out of a negative experience. Um, you also mentioned, Saida, that you struggled with imposter syndrome. How did you get over that? How did you turn that into a positive way of dealing with things?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think I've experienced imposter syndrome my entire life, and I
Wow.
still experience it. Now, how I overcame it was really by realizing the impact that it was having on me. And
Mm,
in the book, Results, the Art and Science of Getting It Done, I actually share, I think there's 8 or 10 different strategies that people can use to help them to deal with this. Imposter syndrome, if somebody doesn't know, is basically you feel like a fraud. And so
yeah.
the evidence is contradictory to that, because you've got the qualifications, you've got the experience, you're able to kind of do the work that you need to do, but
Mm,
inside you feel like a fraud. And it can actually be debilitating, because it was for me. But what
yeah.
happened was I attended an event and I spoke about my imposter syndrome. And in that moment, I made the decision to turn my Achilles heel into my
Mm,
superpower, because actually, this whole concept of imposter syndrome has got some really, really good things that are within it. And one of those is that you're constantly on a search for how to be better. Now, when that gets to the point where it kind of stops you in your tracks, that's when the problem is. And so you can
mm,
put mechanisms in place in order for it no longer to impact you in that way. But I would say that for me, certainly, because I've done the work and I now understand the impact that it was having on me, I've developed a very different relationship with it. And so I know some people say, that they want to get rid of it. I think that that is something that then leans to people always struggling with imposter syndrome. But I believe that when you change your relationship with it and you move from resisting it to accepting it, then actually you kind of can genuinely use it as your superpower. And bear in mind, as I wrote the book,
Yeah.
I was still experiencing imposter syndrome. I still have it,
Mm.
every day it
Yeah.
shows up in different ways. And so
Yeah.
it's more about learning to live with it and kind of saying, how can it help me, rather than saying, I want to get rid of it.
For those who are watching, Saida, can you tell our viewers what imposter syndrome really is, what the symptoms are?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome is feeling like a fraud. It's feeling that you're not good enough. The symptoms are really interesting because you work extra hard, right? Like, I mean, you will study like there is nobody's business, and this, now that I understand the impact it had on me, explains why I have at least 5 degrees. I'm currently reading for a doctorate as well. And, I've got so many different coaching qualifications. There's so many things that are on my CV that I probably didn't need to do to be able to get where I am now. But I did them because I felt, oh, I need something else. And here's the really interesting piece about imposter syndrome, is that the research shows that it affects women more, and it affects people from an ethnic minority background even more. So when
That's
we look
interesting.
at that in the kind of global context, then
Yeah.
there's so much work that we need to do in order to understand if it's affecting us. And if it is, then please get the help that you need. If you've got any questions about imposter syndrome, I'm going to say, find me on social media and ask me, because I feel as if it's my duty to help people to step out of seeing imposter syndrome as something that is kind of debilitating and as negative as it is. And in fact, one of the things on my agenda for next year, or for early 2022, is to write a book on imposter syndrome, because I think it's so important.
Now that you're talking about this, I am thinking there are so many people out there who are in a similar position as you are. And I think, like you mentioned, negativity is something which is natural. It comes itself, no matter how much you try to control your thoughts and emotions. But you always have that little seed of doubt in your head about yourself, about your performance, and whether you'll be able to fulfill your responsibilities, achieve that goal, um, end that task, pass that deadline. Um, there's lots of self-help books out there. But what makes your book unique, Sayeda?
Yeah, and such a wonderful question. Now, self-help books are great. I mean, look, you can see on my bookshelf I've got hundreds of books, and I love reading self-help books and personal development books. The thing that makes this, results, the art and science of getting it done, the thing that makes that very different is that this is the kind of cross section of positive psychology, personal growth, and project management. So it's providing you with the tools to be able to make progress, but also do it whilst you are experiencing joy, and you're flourishing and you're thriving. An underlying theme throughout the entire book is that aspect of flourishing and thriving. Nobody needs to make progress in their life and not feel happy. I would
Hmm.
argue that that is not progress at all. What we need parallel tracks where you are increasing in your level of contentment and joy, and your lived experience is one where you are genuinely happy, but you are also moving forward and making progress in the specific projects that you want to work on. I think what's also important about this is that it's set within a context of science. And so
Okay.
it's research based. It's kind of, I've made sure that I really went through so many different papers to ensure that there's nothing in this book that has not got solid evidence behind it. And I think, that's one of the things that makes it pack a punch, because it's
Yes.
not just anecdotal. There are some really wonderful stories in there, but at the
Oh,
same
okay.
time, it does hit you with the evidence and say,
Hmm.
this is the practicality of it. And also, when you buy the book, then there's some really amazing resources that are available online. So I'm giving you all of the tools to say, this is, this is the template for this is the template for your project 3 by 3, this is the reality check tool that you can use to see whether a project that you've picked is one that you really want to work on. And by kind of holding your hand through the entire process and showing you how you can do it yourself, I think it enables you to feel empowered. I don't like
Mm,
self-help books where you read them and you end them and you just kind of feel good momentarily. I want my book to create a strategic shift in you, or to at least
mm,
give you the tools to say, yeah, this thing works, this thing doesn't. And I say
yeah.
it so many times in it, you take whatever you like from the book and works for you and do it. The pieces that you don't, absolutely don't touch them. You can always come back to it later. But you use the book in the way that you want to, that integrates with your life.
So it's something that can be applied across, different kinds of individuals, regardless of the background, academic background or professional work. And the
Yeah,
tools and techniques
absolutely.
that you have mentioned, you have already tried and tested.
Yeah, and that for me was really, really critical, right? So as soon as the first kind of draft was done of the results method, I actually did
Yeah.
a beta test, and I did it with a
Uh-huh.
group of people from a variety of different backgrounds, and took one organization, a business, through the results method to see the impact that it would have. As a result of that, I made some tweaks and some adjustments. And so this isn't, it's not just a process that has been put together and is based on the research. It's also been tested. So that's another layer of reassurance for people in knowing that this process works and it's been proven to work.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic. I can't wait to read that book, inshallah, Saida. We only have 2 minutes left. So I would request you to give your final message to our viewers out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to encourage everyone to go and get a copy of this book. I think that by having this, you will find yourself with a lot of incredible tools that will help you to build resilience. I mean, it's so funny, Waritha, when you asked me to come um, and do this interview, I was thinking resilience is such a significant word, and there are underlying themes of it throughout the book. So please go and get a copy of Results, the Art and Science of Getting It Done. You can find me at www.results.partners. Find me on social media. If you've got any questions about any of this, I'm very happy to do my best to support you so that you can get the results that you seek in your life and in your businesses.
Thank you so much for that, Sayeda. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I wish everybody who's watching this program right now that whatever obstacles or difficulties you're facing in your life, there is help out there. And people like Sayeda who are working to provide that kind of support, to give you those tools and provide those techniques so you can implement it in your life and get over those challenges and achieve your goals. Nothing is impossible if you um, ask key questions to yourself, if you be compassionate towards yourself and others, accept that whatever has happened in life, there is no way, nothing can like set you back or hold you back. Everything is in your hand, everything is in your control. All you need to do is have the right state of mindset. As Saida encouraged everyone, there are coaches out there, counselors, psychotherapists. If you feel you're struggling at any point in your life, don't feel ashamed or shy to seek help. Till next Saturday, inshallah, we'll see you again with a new fantastic guest and topic. Till then, be compassionate to yourselves and each other. Assalamu alaikum.